I wanted to start with a story that I thought you would appreciate before we dive into Nature is Nonpartisan itself. I thought you'd appreciate this. I went on my first fishing trip pretty recently because I wanted to learn about everything that it took to eat fish, which I do a lot. So catching it, um, killing it, dressing it, cooking it, eating it. And I come from a family that's pretty in tune with nature, but just going on that trip I think was really important for me. And I was wondering for you what the last nature trip was that you went on.
Well, I was in Patagonia with I actually proposed in Patagonia to my fiance, so that it's
Oh,
kinda like the biggest nature trip I've ever taken, probably.
wait, was it this trip where you proposed?
Yeah, like 3 weeks ago.
Congratulations, holy diver. That's amazing.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's really on brand for both of us because 'cause we're both nature lovers, and my dad proposed to my mom on the top of a mountain in France, and I thought my whole life, "That is so sick. I'm not gonna be able to do that." I don't know why I thought that because 'cause I'm on top of mountains as much as I can be, but I decided, to wait until we went to Patagonia, which was, like, my first vacation in a long time, and it was an awesome, awesome experience. So I don't know if I'll ever get a better nature experience than that. At least maybe some funnier stories or like crazier experiences, but I don't know if this is a better experience than
I
that
don't know.
one.
I mean, talk about being in tune with nature and how it reflects with your life. Like that's amazing. That's
There were
wonderful.
birds that soared over our head like falcons, and I mean it was kind of like, and maybe they were trying to eat us, but it was romantic in the way that we at least felt it. It was super cool, and it was a
Why
beautiful day. It was perfect.
why was it important for you to propose in nature?
I mean, other than her, it's the most important part of my life. I mean,
Mhm.
it's the place that I feel the happiest. It's the thing that reminds me about what I do. It's the thing that's inspired me to be who I am, and it's had the same effect on her. So it was something that I mean, we didn't obviously talk about it because you can't ruin the surprise, but I just knew that that would be the only place that made sense for her, and it also was the only place that made sense for me. It's the one place that I feel the most myself. I mean, this work can actually be really difficult and challenging and stressful. And the only way I ever really am able to keep going is by, continuing to be out there. There's nothing more important to the world than nature, and same with nothing more important to me.
I love that. And thank you for sharing that. I mean, I can feel it. And I imagine that that connection has a lot to do with why you started your organization. So can you tell me just a little bit about Nature is Nonpartisan? How did it come to be?
Yeah, I grew up in Wisconsin, and our version of nature was the 12,000 lakes that the state has. And I grew up going up there with my grandpa and family and fishing and boating. And we had a small cabin in the woods that was a family cabin that my grandparents had built in the 1960s. And I just fell in love with nature at a young age. It was something I look forward to every weekend. And I really started to, in high school, become active in politics and realized pretty much during that time that for some reason the environment that I loved was caught up in political warfare.
Mm.
And when I was loving the forests and the trees and the lakes and the outdoors in Wisconsin, and then was able to travel as well with my family to a couple national parks, I was like, I don't know how this could be political in any way and how protected, because it's so obvious when you're in those spaces how much we rely on it to survive.
Mm.
So I think one of the problems that environmentalists have is that they tend to make the environment some like we just need to protect it for the sake of protecting it. When if you go back to like second grade science class, it's like we need to protect it because we actually rely on it to survive. And like, yes, there's a give and take because it provides the resources that we need to build homes and have energy, and we need to take from nature for sure. But we also cannot take everything, otherwise, we cannot exist. And when you're in nature, you realize that. You realize that because of the sheer power and beauty and amazing just vibes that it gives you on a day-to-day basis when you're out there. And then when you go back to your normal life, you kind of forget how much it matters to your day-to-day life. But I couldn't fathom how the most important thing that keeps us going was somehow caught up in political warfare. And so
So then how
we can
did that
go
yeah, how did that play into the founding of the organization then? Because I mean, it's not the first organization you founded, right? Like you had the American Conservation Coalition, which you've now moved on from to
Yeah.
start Nature Is Nonpartisan. Like, what gap in the existing groups were you trying to address that doesn't exist right now?
Well, I would consider myself truly politically independent at this point in my life. I'm politically homeless, probably for lack of better
Politically
terms.
homeless. Okay. Yeah.
Um, and I first started ACC because I wanted to get conservatives back to the table on the environment to make it bipartisan.
Mhm.
But what I realized in doing that was that that also sort of made it partisan in a roundabout way because it was only focusing on conservatives. And in today's politics, it's us versus them all the time. And so if you're just focused on conservatives, then you're just trying to get conservatives to win on that issue. And that's just not, it's helpful in getting us closer to the bipartisanship, but it doesn't really get us there. The real reason why I started Nature is Nonpartisan wasn't based off of that. It was based off of the fact that if you are an American that cares about the environment that wants to join a movement around the environment, I don't think that there is one right now that's culturally relevant, that's kind of fun to be a part of, that makes you
Mm.
wanna be a part of it. So I think that that's missing. And I also think there's a movement missing that actually represents the wide swath of people who care. Like, if you're a Prius driving hippie, there's a group for you, and if you're a gun toting hunter, there's a group for you. But the reality is those groups actually want the same things, and there's not really an organization or a movement that represents that either.
How do you make an organization that's culturally relevant in your eyes? Like, what does that mean to you?
When you think about the American fabric, the identity around America, you think about a lot of different things, and it might depend on who you are. But there are certain things that make Americans values obvious. So like freedom, individual liberty, the ability to do what you want, limited government. Those are kind of things that America has embodied. I would love to make the environment something that is part of the American ethos
Mm.
because it's something that we have been blessed with. I mean, this country is the most environmentally diverse country. You have the deserts of the Southwest, you've got the rainforest in the Northwest, you've got the plains, and you've got the East Coast's amazing diversity from north to south. And it's really not part of the American ethos right now. You don't really think about it when you walk around as an American in a way that actually did used to exist. So in the 1970s and 80s, Americans did sort of wear the environment on their sleeves. It was something that people showed up for all the time. And it was in movies, it was part of your community. The first Earth Days were almost nationally celebrated events. And Americans advocated for the environment together in a way that was very cultural. And it's also how we got, the Lorax and all these kind of cultural movies and iconic things that came out, and right now that's not happening, at least in a way that's not polarized. So we're trying to do that in the 21st century way, which looks a lot different. But to me, that's going where people are. It's YouTube, it's social media, it's doing it in a digital way, but then also connecting people to in-person communities where they can go and volunteer and be a part of a conservation movement. It's having some of the biggest voices who maybe aren't seen as environmental figures become part of the conversation and have them be leaders in this space. So it's really doing it in a way that's less policy centric and more like community, human, pop culture centric, and you're going to be seeing a lot more of kind of how we're going to do that in the years to come. But that's sort of the broad strokes of how I think we can shift towards getting the answers we need, because today politics more than ever is downstream of culture, and if culture is not talking about the environment, we don't get the environmental action that we need.
That point, that last one about it being downstream, I think is especially relevant because
Mhm.
as I'm listening to you, I can kind of feel myself nodding along with the fact that it's polarizing. It is a point of political leverage now based on what side of the aisle you kind of find yourself on. I think the point about the Lorax is also quite interesting. I mean, the speaker for
Mhm.
the trees is this cultural touchstone that I
Yeah.
know, at least I don't know if like younger folks still relate to it as much, but it was like a very that Dr. Seuss character is very apparent. I don't know. I mean, maybe Captain Planet in the 90s is the next one. I can't think of like a cartoon character
Right.
of climate
There's
space.
nothing. And
Right.
really, I mean, if you ask people what they think of in the last 30 years when it comes to the environment, they would name off individuals who are polarizing.
Mm.
They would name off Al Gore, Greta Thunberg, AOC, And I'm not saying that those people don't have a lot of validity in what they say a lot of the time, but those are individual people
They're
who are
political.
politically adjacent, who are
Sure.
very polarizing. And when you think about the environment in the latter half of the 20th century, it's Smokey the Bear, it's the Lorax, it's Americans standing together. It's actually something that's fairly positive. It's rivers that were on fire that are now not on fire in Ohio. And so that's the sort of change that we need to get back to.
Mm. I also want to talk about in the policy sphere, you and your organization helped shape the executive order creating the Make America Beautiful Again Conservation Commission. Can you tell me about
Mhm.
that a little bit and how it came to be?
Well, something that people will learn about me over time, hopefully, is that I really don't ever write anybody off,
Mm,
ever. And if you look up my background, I have a history of not being a big Donald Trump fan. So I just want to get that out there. But that doesn't mean that I would never stop trying to work with somebody who I disagree with. And no matter how much I dislike them, and in good faith, like I'm not going to go in there to try to sabotage them. Like if you change your mind and you want to work on my team or at least be on my team for this one issue, I'm all in to work with you. So when President Trump won in 2024, I was already getting this organization going and I wanted to make a cultural movement organization, but I also wanted it to work from a policy standpoint to show that it can be nonpartisan, that literally anyone can show up to the table. And I thought, what better way to show that than to have one of the most anti-environment, at least in perception, politicians work across the aisle to get something good done for the environment. And who else is going to be trying this? Because no one really in the environmental community would even think it's possible. So we very early on decided that it'd be a perfect showcase of what could happen. And while there hasn't been a lot of follow through on the commission and the actions, although there's 3 years left, so maybe they'll change their course on that. I think it just showed the power of showing up in a nonpartisan way
mm,
because we actually helped write and craft the executive order, which for those who don't know, which is pretty much everybody, the commission is tasked to solve problems related to national park funding, access issues for people when they're recreating, to help fight forest fires, some more conservation related issues. And the thing is, when we went into the White House to talk about that, we went in partnership with groups from across the spectrum. So it
mm.
wasn't just us; it was some groups on the left and some groups on the right. And if you asked us how we got it done, it was that we tried and we were persistent about it, and we weren't gonna just say, "Okay, this guy is not good for the environment, and so we're not gonna try." So that was number one. But number two was we worked with people across the spectrum to show the president's team that this is like an 80-20 issue, if not a 90-10 issue. People want you to do this. And we showed up in that force and it got done. So has he been the most pro-environmental president ever? Obviously, no. That would be a complete lie to like try to greenwash that. However, it is true that when you show up in a nonpartisan way, you get a lot more done.
Simultaneously, like there are realities that if you are in the policy world, make it very difficult when you're trying to find compromise or like live with something that
Hmm.
maybe you don't feel right about in the first place. I mean, on the Department of Interior's website, the first priority of the Make America Beautiful Again Conservation Commission is to, quote, balance stewardship and economic growth. Environmental protection and the responsible development of natural resources are not mutually exclusive. America's golden age is about energy dominance and conservation abundance. And I'm sure that there are people that would read that statement and think, okay, it's a cynical ploy, open up public lands, more fossil fuel development. How do you navigate that when you're in the room and you're trying to make things meet together to push things forward?
It's really hard, but I think that those are the hardest conversations that Americans aren't willing to have right now. When you look back at history, like that's how politics used to work is as actually trying to find that compromise, which is really uncomfortable almost all the time. And what you just read off, I actually don't think is very problematic. Like we have to build homes and we have to, mine for minerals that are in our phones, and we have to mine for minerals that are in solar panels. Like we have to balance economic stewardship and environmental protection. But if that is just code words for opening up public lands, then that isn't okay. So compromising on the approach and compromising on the details are different things.
Mm,
If you're saying, "Hey, we do need to balance these things," totally fair. But if balance is in the name of actually just greenwashing or overshadowing what's actually happening, then that's a different problem,
Well, I mean, I
right?
guess
So
to
if
your point, it's about the good faith argument,
it
right?
is,
Like,
it is.
and I mean to interrupt you.
So
Sorry, go on.
no, I mean, if yeah, if you're showing up because you actually wanna strike that balance, then that's actually the right way to do it, in my opinion. It's way better than it being militant and saying, "We can't develop resources anywhere," or "We have to develop resources everywhere." But you actually have to follow through on that balance, and if someone doesn't follow through on the balance, then they were lying, and so I think
Mm,
that that's the compromise has to come, but it can't come at the expense of people just lying about it just to get people on board.
yeah. Do you feel like it's harder to operate in good faith now, or the same, or
Oh, it's
easier?
brutal. I mean, it's DC is the worst place on earth. I mean, it's and I mean that. Like, I'm not even making an analogy. I think it actually might be the worst place on earth because it's the most egocentric, power-driven center of the universe that I've ever seen, and there's so much manipulation going on,
Mm,
and the manipulation is at the expense of all of us, and people believe it, and people are gonna think that's me coding just an attack on Trump. It's not. It's an attack on the whole political system in general. People don't realize how bad it is, and it's not quite House of Cards bad. People aren't necessarily being shoved in front of trains, but it's close. It's
yeah.
close to that. And so it's harder than ever, and I've been doing political stuff since I was 10, I'm 28 now, it's 18 years. It's by far the worst I've ever seen, and people don't want good faith people to work with them. In DC, you're incentivized by working with bad faith actors. It's all transactional. It's all, "What do I get in this? What do you get in that? How do I rise up in the ranks?" And it's it's why we have to build the cultural movement. We have to create a world where politicians can't afford to not strike the balance that we're talking about.
Mm,
We have to show them that that's actually what people want, and you can show them polling that
mhm.
shows that, but, like, the force of the actual people is not backing that up, and until we change that, it's gonna be hard to get these bad forces to actually pay attention and also just to I mean, my other passion is trying to figure out how we change the political system in general. I'm hoping that this is a first mover issue in that, but right now, DC is beyond broken, and it's harder than it's ever been, and it's honestly dismaying, but it also makes the work so much more important. I think it's leaning into how crappy the polarization is to then undo it, right? Like, some things are bigger than the polarization that we're seeing. Decency, humanity, love of the environment, these things do transcend party lines for most people or ideological lines. And although the media and social media really tries hard to convince us otherwise, I posted a video a few weeks ago about after Renee Good died, the protester, that liberals were convinced after that that Republicans just wanted them dead.
Mm,
And when Charlie Kirk died, Republicans were convinced that liberals just wanted them dead because that's what the social media algorithms that they follow are saying. And I kind of follow everybody, so I saw both. Like when Charlie Kirk died, all the people on my conservative feed were saying, "See, the liberals just want us dead." And I'm like thinking to myself, I am surrounded by liberals all the time, and none of them would have ever wanted that to happen. Or the same thing with the Renee Good thing. Like I know a ton of conservatives were like, "Dang, that sucks that she died," and it's like that's not okay. So I think it just speaks to why, unfortunately, that's a really dark example of why we would do something like that, and that we're going to keep leaning into the polarization to unpolarize it. Like there are some things that rise above partisan politics and ideology. The environment has to be one of those things because it is bigger than that. At the end of our lives, no one will remember what political beliefs we had, but if we don't have a planet for the next generation, they'll remember that, and the planet will remember that. Like, no one cares about who wins elections 50 years from now other than the planet. Like, that's what we leave behind.
mm.
We're be skulls underneath the earth, and the earth should be there when we're dead and gone. It should be there long after. And whatever political identity we wore on our sleeve is so much less important than that. Same with being a good person, same with being a good family member, same with treating people well, same with showing up for people, right? We've lost the plot that above these stupid political bickering things that we are humans, and it's not just cliche to say that. It's true, and we're being pitted against each other in a way that's not helpful. So I think leaning into that to help people realize that, oh wait, a conservative and a liberal can actually see the same way is an important thing.
Yeah, and I think your point about the feeds that we see is so relevant because
Yeah.
we become isolated and I think especially just get fed things to enforce certain points of view. But then you say, like, we lost the plot. Okay, how do you reintroduce the plot? Because
Mm,
the reality of that is that Republicans have historically been skeptical of climate policy.
mhm.
And yet, if I'm understanding it right, polling for younger conservatives seems to show that they care more about the issue. So is that a shift that we're seeing inside the party, or is that just like still mostly rhetorical? What have you seen?
Is a shift, but I think what we need to realize is that it's not even right versus left in this case, it's right versus wrong, and, like, we just need to focus on bringing people into the movement who see the right versus wrong argument. Like, we have to lower emissions, we have to protect the environment, we have to be able to leave the world better than we found it, and that's not a partisan belief, and so, yeah, there's gonna be some conservatives who are against that and some conservatives who are for that, and we just need to build a winning coalition of people. One of the ways we're going to show that is we're launching a YouTube show that's going to have two unlikely people sit down together over a campfire to talk about the environment, and the
Mm,
host is a comedian. Uh, and so it's gonna be lighthearted and fun. But like we had a drag queen and a conservative influencer, we had a Mormon leader and a tribal leader, we had really unlikely people, a Democrat member of Congress who also served in the Biden administration with a rancher, and we're just trying to show up front that these things, these like boxes that we put ourselves in are not necessarily accurate, that the media exacerbates actually how real that difference is. And that, yes, there are more young conservatives that believe in climate change than people would think, but it's so much more than that. It's about like, are you on the same side as each other on the end goal of leaving this planet better than you found it?
have you filmed any of those episodes yet?
Yeah, we filmed all six of the first episodes.
How have you watched the footage back yourself?
Yeah, it's incredible. I
Can you
mean,
tell
it's
me
so
about it? Like
inspiring.
what yeah, what's
Yeah, I
inspiring
mean,
about it?
so I'm not gonna get too detailed on this, but one of
Sure.
the guests got there and learned that they're being paired with another guest, and they hadn't read the email correctly because everyone flew in for this, by the way. So they landed in Utah, and they learned that they were being paired with one of the guests, and they threatened to fly home
Oh, wow.
because they were so upset about who they were being paired with, even though we'd already told them. Then they ended up having breakfast together. And now and before they were supposed to go on, and she wasn't gonna go on and do this anyways, she was just gonna eat breakfast and leave. And they ended up becoming, like, best friends. They were crying together, they were hugging each other, and the podcast was so inspirational. And this was somebody who threatened to leave because they didn't like the perception of what they thought of the other guest. And that is a microcosm of what happened during the whole recording session, which was 6 episodes, 6 different pairings of 12 people. Everyone of course, there were some minor disagreements, but everyone left feeling so inspired. Some of the guests who are some A-list people were like, "This is one of the best weeks of my life. It was one
Mm.
of the most inspirational, uplifting weeks of my life." And I've known for years that this was possible, and just getting these people in the room to share those stories, to share a stage together that will now be public on YouTube for people to see. Not a single one was adversarial, and I
Mhm.
and it and they got to depth. They were talking about I mean, they got to talk to about sex and religion and like a whole host. Like we brought them together to talk about the environment, but they ended up just opening up about everything, and it was so cool.
It sounds like something that I'd wanna watch, and it makes me wonder about the ways in which we talk about these issues, and
Mhm,
all the way down to, like, the specific words that we use,
mhm,
which I think is a good opportunity to talk about something I noticed about your website, which is that on Nature Is Nonpartisan's website, I actually couldn't find a single use of the word climate. Like, I saw
mhm,
preventing wildfires, I saw improving water infrastructure, ensuring natural disaster resilience, which all kind of, I think, the root there is improving the climate. Can you tell me about that? Is like climate a dirty word when you're trying to talk about this to different sides?
I mean, it's a really good point, and first of all, for those who care about climate change, like, climate change is a main driver for me, and I'm unashamed in saying that. I mean, if you read my book or if you look at anything I've ever said in an interview, like, I obviously believe in climate change, and it's important for us to solve. The reality is that climate change is all of that, right? And the other reality is that people's reason for caring about climate change usually revolves around nature. Like, people want to leave the planet better than they found it, or they're worried about the air quality, or they're worried about the heat impact, so they're worried about the plants that are dying or the animal. Like, they're worried about the physical environment around them more than they're worried about like the science of parts per million in the atmosphere. So if we're going to bring people into a movement, we have to meet them where they're at, what they care about. You know, if you care about hunting, or you care about fishing, or you care about hiking, or you care about the forest, that's your why, your WHY. That's what we need to tap into. And when you talk about climate, half of the country thinks that you are meaning something that's different than what you and I want it to mean, which is leaving the world better than we found it, lowering carbon emissions so that we have a more healthy, livable planet. When people hear climate change, they don't think of that.
What do
They
they
think
think of?
of
Yeah, sorry, go ahead, please.
socialism, socialism. They think of the government telling you what car you can and can't drive. They think of the government telling you what stove you can and can't use. They think about the government telling you what jobs you can and can't have. That's the perception of climate in most communities. It has nothing to do with climate itself. That's some work that we have to do over time to show people that that's not true. But I would rather build a movement centered around what people care about, and genuinely, like, this isn't like some like ulterior motive, like genuinely get people to get involved in the issues that they care about, and then help them realize that, oh, this is all climate. If you restore the forest, that's good for climate. If you have better sustainable agriculture practices, that's good for the climate. If you have more abundant, diverse energy sources, that's good for the climate.
Well, I
Those are
want
the
to
sorts of
step in
things
there because
over
that
time.
makes sense. If the idea is to get more people into the tent, and I think that's super important. But at what point do you think then it is appropriate to get real and upfront about climate as an underlying cause? Like, is that along the path, or do you does it not factor in eventually for you?
It absolutely factors in, but I think we can do both simultaneously. So what I mean by that is, if you are able to rewild a huge part of America and restore ecosystems, if you're able to embrace more sustainable agriculture practices, restore forests, restore oceans, not under the name of climate, you get so many more people on board, and it also lowers emissions. And simultaneously, you can start building the trust around the word and around the term. I don't know what timeline that is, and I'm not trying to shy away from it, but
Yeah.
I think you can do both simultaneously.
Yeah, what I hear you saying is it's about scaffolding for you,
Right.
right? Like, yeah.
But still make climate progress along the way. Just make it about what people care about, and not make it about this umbrella term that oftentimes turns people off, but you could actually get to the same end goal by just talking about what people care about.
Well, I mean, talking about progress, I mean, you said you've been in this for 18 years. What policy areas have you found the most bipartisan traction on going on in Washington? Like,
Yeah.
policy areas where Democrats and Republicans, everyone can actually work together on conservation related issues.
Well, I think you've seen some of the most bipartisan historic bills ever happen in the last 10 years. And you've also seen some of the worst things happen environmentally in the last 10 years. Unfortunately, we only know about the latter, and I'm not trying to shy away from that. And those are real. But we passed the largest national park investment ever, and it would pass 98 to 2 or something. We passed the largest investment in sustainable agriculture ever, and it passed with over 90% of the vote. We've passed multiple huge forest restoration initiatives. We are seeing emissions actually drop overall in the country, and that's largely because of states that are working well on climate and on the environment, but a lot of them are red states. There's also a lot of blue states, but there is a lot of progress, and it's largely around, again, conservation related issues, and then getting the left and the right to work together on energy and transportation related things is harder when you make it just about climate. But when you make it about the economy, when you make it about national security, when you make it about economic development in a specific state or a specific region, and you make it about climate, all those things simultaneously, then you get more people on board. So there is a lot of opportunity for progress. And what's really frustrating for me is that the left only wants to talk about climate and the right only wants to talk about economic development. And in reality, there is a Venn diagram overlap there that
Where the
both sides are sort of missing.
Yeah, it makes sense that those are the kind of two parts of the arguments that you hear from either side.
I was on a road trip to highlight climate progress around the country in 2020, and I went to a wind turbine manufacturer facility in South Dakota, one of the most Republican states in the country, where they're leading the country in renewables, at least in terms of the percentage of renewables that's used. And they sell it to other states. And one of the guys who was making the wind turbines was like, one day my daughter woke up and she really cared about the climate. And she asked me if I was a climate activist or environmentalist. And I said no. And then she heard that I went to go work at a wind turbine manufacturing facility. And she said, Daddy, you are an environmentalist. And he was like, wait a second, maybe I am. And he was like proud to tell me this story. And he was an avid outdoorsman and lover of nature, and he just hadn't made the connection that maybe working in renewables from an
Is
economic
the
perspective made him a climate activist, and that he was unashamed then. And I think that that's a really cool anecdote.
That is a cool anecdote. Um, Benji, where do you feel like your work has had the most impact over the last 18 years?
I think first it was showing that conservatives could engage in a way that was not antithetical to their values. We were really instrumental in passing some of those bipartisan laws that I listed off,
Hmm.
and the organization that I founded, ACC, has 100,000 conservatives who are part of it, who are care deeply about the environment and climate. So I think that's a massive impact. But when I think about where I want to be in 50, 60 years, and we're less than 1 year into building Nature's Nonpartisan, and there's a lot of growth that we're going to have in 2026 that I'm really excited to share with everybody. I really want this to be the environmental movement of the 21st century. That's the legacy that I want this organization to leave. So it's not about me, it's about how do we build something that's durable, that politicians listen to and act on because they know that Americans stand behind them. And that's going to take a lot longer, so I can't say it's a success yet, but that's the big audacious goal that I have for the next phase.
Yeah. I think that's
Yeah.
such a lovely sentiment to close out. But you mentioned not just that nature is nonpartisan, is like trying to be cultural, but also fun. I think I'd heard you say.
Mhm.
What does fun look like to you with nature is nonpartisan?
Well, Nature's Nonpartisan itself, our team is fun, our mission's fun because we're kind of going against the grain of what people think is possible. But our campaigns that we're about to launch are all super fun. So we're about to launch something called Going Public, where we're going to allow every American to claim a share of their
Okay.
favorite public land because it's already something that they own as an American and their public lands. And people will be able to get a certificate to put up on their wall or in their office that says, I'm a proud public landowner of X national park or X national forest. But when you do that, again, it's free. It automatically tells your senators and congresspeople that you want public lands to be funded and maintained. And so it'll be this kind of like, and there's gonna be a cool stock leaderboard of the national parks and forests, or people that can track their favorite place and rally their friends to support their favorite place. And it'll be super fun campaign that people can have some ownership on, literally, but they can also be advocating for what they care about at the same time. And so instead of like sign this petition, otherwise your life's going to end, or show up to this protest because the world sucks, it's like, no, take an action and you get to benefit from it in some way, whether just because it's fun or because you can track your favorite land to win, or you can get a certificate in the mail that you can put in your office. And that's just one small example of the type of, fun initiatives that we're going to make people feel like they want to join a movement from.
Yeah. If you were going to pick a share of public land, where would it be?
My favorite public land is probably the Nicollet National Forest in northern Wisconsin because that's where I fell in love with the outdoors, or the Olympic National Park.
I love that.
Yeah.
I think mine would be the Adirondacks in upstate New York, because that's where I grew up. And I went on many, many long bike rides there. And I had a lot of time to think, and I really appreciated it.
Well, you got to rally your friends and family to support that one so it wins, because it's going to run until May 30th. So you've got some time to rally everybody.
Awesome. Benji Backer is founder and CEO of Nature Is Nonpartisan. Benji, thanks for hanging out with us on Climate One.
Super fun. Thanks. And I'll be back.